Hello there, as Obi-Wan Kenobi says. Well, after all, it is an Obi-Wan Kenobi Wednesday with episode 4 out today for all my Star Wars fans out there that listen to this show. Probably a little bit of a mediocre episode. I liked the first three a lot better, but figured I would start all your day out with a nice hello there that Obi-Wan does much better than me, to say the least. But we're actually almost through all of the forward season reviews. I haven't done Kasperi Kapanen, but with how much I've already talked about him, I think you all know where I stand with him and how his season was, what I think the Penguins should do with him. Today's will be Jeff Carter's, and I believe that wraps up all of the 12 forwards. All the top 12 normal forwards. I can maybe do Drew O'Connor or Redeems Horner or something like that before we get to the defensemen and the three goaltenders that played this year. So we'll go over Carter's season, what I liked, what I didn't like, what the team should do with him heading into the 2022-2023 season, even though he basically is under contracts. There's really not much. I don't think he'll be getting traded, but still, how many minutes he should get, line mates, all that good stuff. We'll also get to an interesting article I saw on The Athletic today with Hailey Salvian, the Flames beat reporter, saying if Johnny Gaudreau leaves Calgary, where could he sign? 5 potential landing spots. She does list the Pittsburgh Penguins, so I'm going to get into that, how realistic that is. And then we'll also go into a couple of other things to end the show. That's all coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. It's been basically almost a month now since the Penguins were eliminated by the New York Rangers in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Definitely weird, to say the least, that it's been almost a month. If I can go down here and find this. We're about 5 to 6 days away from a full month. It's crazy how fast the offseason is already flying by. Before you know it, free agents friendly is going to be there here, which is July 13th. We're almost a month away from that, and that's going to be a blast to go. The podcast is going to be 5 days a week until that point. They don't be back to doing 3 days a week for the full off season. But start today's show. Let's get into these weird Johnny Gaudreau rumors, because yes, it is silly season. I am going to talk about this because I did read this today. And Hailey says, in a perfect world, for Ron Hextall, Malkin and Letang retire as Pittsburgh Penguins, but he certainly has limits on how much and how long he's willing to sign them. He obviously has that. She has that quote, from the press conference. She suggests that talks have been ongoing and all this stuff, but then she goes on to say this: if Malkin goes elsewhere, do the Penguins try to find another second line center, or does the team move Jeff Carter into that role and use Malkin's previously earmarked $9.5 million cap hit to sign a third line center and a top six winger? Whether that's bringing back Rickard Rakell or maybe looking at like someone like Gaudreau remains to be seen. There's a reason to believe Gaudreau could be a fit. He'd be going east, although to a Philadelphia rival, and could be the face for a renewed push for contention in Sidney Crosby's window. Okay, definitely an intriguing explanation, or I cannot speak today. I don't know what is going on. Fascinating, I think, is the word for it. I'll say this. They go into next year with Jeff Carter as their second line center. Ron Hextall should be fired. That is unacceptable. I don't think he is that stupid to do something like that. I mean, the team would be really fighting for a playoff spot at that point. And I usually don't bet against the Penguins under Sidney Crosby to not make the playoffs. But they would be up a creek. I think of that way. Sure, they would have him, Jake Ensel, potentially Chris Letang back if he signs, Tristan Jarry, some other good forwards. But you're telling me that you're only going to bring back Jeff Carter as your second line center, and then who's going to be your third line center? Who's going to be your fourth line center? It's just going to be Sidney Crosby and a bunch of dudes. That's not good, to say the least. I would love Gaudreau on this team, and if Malkin were to walk, sure they would potentially have the cap space for it because that is $9.5 million right there. Even if they did bring back Chris Letang at $8 million, they would still have the space available to bring in Gaudreau. But the big thing is, how do you fit it under the cap when the season begins? Who are you moving out? They're going to have to finagle the cap somehow, whether that's Brian Dumoulin, whether that's Jason Zucker, maybe it's another forward on the team like Brock McGinn, something like maybe Evan Rodriguez walks too. He doesn't come back. Danton Heinen or Kasperi Kapanen, they don't come back either. It would be a very tall order for the Penguins to sign Gaudreau. Again, I personally do not think it's going to happen. It would be a lot of fun. He is an elite player in his own right. It would be funny though, going from Crosby and Malkin for 16 years to Crosby and Gaudreau for at least the next 3 for Sidney Crosby when he's under contract, probably will be a little bit more. And then after that, probably 4 to 5 more years for Gaudreau because he would be signing a 7 to 8 year contract for the Penguins. As for his cap hit, he will be getting way more than Evgeny Malkin's 9.5. You're probably looking for Johnny, well over 10. I would say, the ballpark I'm looking at is maybe Panarin's number, which I think is 10.5, maybe 11, something like that. I don't think he's going to get 12 or 13, but I think the ballpark you're looking at 10 million plus per year. Would the Penguins commit to that? Who knows? It would be definitely a good backup plan, but there's going to be a lot of teams in on this player outside the Calgary Flames. Hailey writes in her story, she has the Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, that's the hometown thing for Gaudreau. He's from the Philadelphia area. She has the New Jersey Devils in there, the New York Islanders, the Nashville Predators. All of those teams, I think, make a lot of sense. And she also does add for the Penguins, if new ownership, which wants to keep Letang and Malkin, can't get that done, it would certainly want to start to replace Malkin, given the market expectation for multiple star offensive players in Pittsburgh. Hailey is right about that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, when Daniel Alfredsson left Ottawa to go to Detroit. And I'm not comparing, the talent level between Daniel Alfredsson to Evgeny Malkin. I know who is more talented. I know who had the better career and all that. I'm just talking about from like the franchise icon perspective, so to speak. When Alfredsson left, Senators fans, they had to bring in someone to really fill that void, right? I remember, I think I was 16 or something at the time. They brought in Bobby Ryan. They brought in a couple other players to try and, make Senators fans happy. And, sure, Ryan was good for a few years there before he ended up leaving the Senators, but it still didn't feel right. And he obviously was never going to fill the void that Alfredsson left. And, I think if they were to sign Gaudreau, he would he would put up better numbers than Evgeny Malkin. That's probably one of the only players that's on the market right now that the Penguins could sign that would put up better numbers than Geno. It would just be very difficult for the Penguins to do, which is why I'm just not thinking it's too likely, because they want to bring Malkin back, they want to bring Letang back, they don't want to have to go to market to drive up the price on other teams to get him, or have other teams in turn drive up the price, so Pittsburgh would have to pay something that maybe they don't want to pay. I think Ron Hextall, speaking about the Brock McGinn contract last year, and then Jim Rutherford with Brandon Tanev, he even said, I didn't want to go 5 to 6 years, but teams just kept pushing and pushing, and you have to give a little bit to get the player you want. And, that's probably not a good reasoning to go 6 years for a bottom 6 player. And, same with Brock McGinn for 4 years, but that's how the UFA market works. Agents are going to do everything they can to drive up the price for their clients. And, Gaudreau's agent will 100% do that for him because, he's, in my opinion, he's the best player going into the market this year. So right now, I do think it is a bit unlikely that the Penguins get him. It was pretty cool to see the Penguins listed, though. I think Gaudreau is going to go to a team that, can actually pay him the money that he wants. The Penguins, I think, are too invested in a lot of other things right now. I know Hextall said that if they can't get Malkin done, they will look to the open market to bring him in. But I think at that point, they're probably just going to look at someone like Trocheck, who you can get for a lot cheaper. Definitely not nearly as good as Gaudreau and is not as good as Malkin, but they'll try to sell the hometown storyline thing and all that. So want to spend the first segment touching on those rumors and my thoughts on that. Again, I love Johnny Gaudreau. He's one of my favorite players. He just coming off a season where he had 100 plus points. One of the top 10 to 15 best players in the league, would make the Penguins a playoff team again, potentially a contender, even if Malkin isn't on the team next year, if you can put Gaudreau on the second line. But I really don't see it, to say the least. And again, from a salary cap perspective, Penguins are always up against the cap. They would have to do a lot of, maneuvering around that. It would be kind of similar to maybe what Vegas has had to do in the past. I know they've gotten takers, but, is there a full guarantee that the Penguins will get some takers for their players? It remains to be seen because, they do have some big contracts on their team, to say the least. So that wraps up this little silly season segment about Johnny Gaudreau. Again, I don't expect it to happen, and I don't think any of you all should either. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to get into Jeff Carter's season review, what I liked, what I didn't like, and what to expect from him next season, because, I definitely think he's likely going to be on the team next year. He just got the contract extension here, people. But before we get to that, you can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why should you choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more from the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The prices are always reliably low for every customer. They have everything you can need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. You can go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. You go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car, truck, and you can write "Locked On" in their "How to Hear About Us" box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That is rockauto.com. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow this show, Twitter at LO_Penguins. A quick note here. We have a listener survey that we've put together. So we have an important favor to ask of each of you that listen to this show. So again, we put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity. Tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcast. You can go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It does not take very long, and everyone that completes the survey, you can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards to take our audience survey. Again, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Remember, you can get one of 10 Ticketmaster gift cards if you do that. Thanks for your help. All right. Anyways, that aside, let's get to Jeff Carter's season review here. We'll go back to natural stat trick. My mouth was getting a little bit dry there. But okay, let's look at the underlying numbers here. So Carter played in 76 of the 82 games this year. He was relatively healthy the entire time. When he was on the ice, the Penguins had only 47% of the shot attempts. That's his lowest number since 2018-19 when he was with the Kings. Even last year when he played 14 games with the Penguins, that number was at 53.6%. Even with Los Angeles, it was right around 50-50 in 40 games. In terms of actual goals for, he was on the ice for 43.6% of the goals, 49 goals against, 38 goals for. Compared to last year, the Penguins in the short sample size, 15 goals for, 5 goals against. I mean, he just fell off a cliff. The 43% is the worst since 2019-20 when he was on the ice for 39 goals for Los Angeles, 23 for. Expected goals percentage this year, 47.5%. That's the lowest number he's had since 2018-19 when it was at 45.8%. Scoring chances wise, when he was on the ice, the Penguins had only 48.6% of the scoring chances. With LA last year, it was at 46.4%. When he got to Pittsburgh in 14 games, 57.5%. I don't think enough people realize just how dominant he was in that short sample size. In total, it was 20 games if you count the playoffs, where he was just a point per game player, looking like a prime Jeff Carter and not the player that we saw this year. I think the player who we saw this year outside of his 18 goals, when you look at the numbers, I think that's who everyone was expecting to see when he was acquired from the Kings last year at the deadline. It was just, it came a year late. Anyways, going into more of the numbers here, high danger. When he was on the ice, the Penguins had only 48% of those chances. And then 31 high danger goals against, 24 high danger goals for. Shot 7.5% with the Penguins last year in those 14 games. 14.8%. In Jeff Carter's career, he has only shot over 10% once, and that came all the way back in 2010-11 with the Philadelphia Flyers. Again, it is absolutely remarkable how good Carter was after he came over from the Kings. But this year, it just wasn't it. I mean, he was a plague when he was on the ice. And I know I've said this about 500 times this episode and throughout the offseason. I get that he had almost 20 goals this year. But, other than that, what was he doing? Playmaking was not there. Defensively, he was a train wreck. He can't play him on the penalty kill. You can't move him up the lineup because he drags everyone else down. It's no wonder that, when he was playing with his line mates, they had worse numbers with him than they did with other centers. And that includes Teddy Bluger, who I reviewed his season a couple of days ago, and I honestly wasn't super crazy about him there. So, this is only, I think, going to continue to get worse for him as he gets older. I was fine with the extension at the time because it looked like he was still playing well. Remember, he started out the season pretty red hot. It was similar to what he was doing last year when he came over from the Kings. But then as soon as he signed that extension, I think it was about almost halfway through the year, and he just went straight down, nosedive. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. Just playing like a player who has definitely almost reached the end of his NHL career. Signed the 2-year extension, and it's looking bad right now. It's looking like one of Hextall's worst moves. I think, in my opinion, it's not good enough for me. And honestly, the more I think about it, I think Ron should have just waited until after the season to really decide on this player. I think he let loyalty cloud his judgment a bit, thinking that, I know this player and he knows me and we've been together for so many years. I'm going to sign him to this extension because I think he's going to keep playing at this level, and I don't think he's going to be trailing off anytime soon, but didn't want to see how the rest of the season played out for someone who was almost 40 years old. I don't like how he went into it, and especially with that's your first signing when you have so many other deals to agree to either during the season or after the season. And I know his MO is, I don't negotiate during the season, but he kind of did with that Jeff Carter thing. What stopped you from, signing Brian Rust during the season, or signing Evgeny Malkin, or signing Chris Letang? Why was Jeff Carter the first one you decided to bring back out of all of those free agents? And I'll even put Evan Rodriguez, Danton Heinen, and Kasperi Kapanen in there, even though the latter two are restricted free agents. I really don't get it. That's where he really loses me with that. I know it's been up and down for Hextall with his tenure as general manager, but that contract, going back to Carter, obviously, it's not looking good, to say the least. I'll get to his playoff numbers here to wrap up this. So played in all 7 games, had about 100 minutes of even strength ice time. He got caved in even worse. This short sample size. Penguins only had 41% of the shot attempts at even strength. That's the worst of his playoff career. 3 goals for, 9 goals against, 25% total there. Expected goals, 51.7%, so that's not bad. But when you go to the scoring chances, the Penguins had only 42% of the actual scoring chances at 5v5. High danger was a bit better, 55.5% of those, and then 2 high danger goals for, 1 high danger goals against. But, for shot attempts and scoring chances, he got caved in. And, I said this at the time of the playoff series, and I will repeat this here. The Penguins were up 2-0 in Game 5. You obviously all remember that. We all saw what happened. And Carter came out for Evgeny Malkin a couple of those shifts when Sidney Crosby was in the locker room. He didn't return, of course. And, the Rangers had basically no zone time in the offensive zone for the first 33 to 34 minutes of that game. All of a sudden, Sid goes out. Sullivan does not put Malkin in his spot. He puts Carter in that spot. And what do you know? One of the goals for that is on natural stat, one of the goals against, that's on natural stat trick, is the Adam Fox goal. It was a minute shift in the Penguins defensive zone. They can't get the puck out. They're not getting the save that they need. And, Carter is just, he's not doing enough. And, he then, I think, gets walked by Jacob Trouba, who scores the tying goal. Actually, no, not the tying goal, excuse me. He scores the goal to make it 3-2 before Penguins made it 3-3 going into the third period. That's not what a defensively responsible third line center, should be doing in that situation. I mean, if you're getting walked by Jacob Trouba, who are you going to get walked by next season when you're a year older? That's my biggest thing. And I'm sorry I'm being so negative about this player. I'm just not high on him going into next season. I feel like this contract, it's already aged like milk. It's going to continue to age like a really sour milk. Does he score double-digit goals next season? Probably. I don't think he's going to score 18. Maybe 10 to 15 he'll get. I still think he'll have a decent amount of points at 5v5 this year. If I can go back here to his regular season numbers, excuse me. I almost just. I'm going to go on Hockey Reference here. Actually, but he's getting older at this point, and the production is only going to go down from here. I'm sorry that I did not have that pulled up. So 45 points, 76 games. Just a couple away from 20 goals. Actually, one away, but who's really counting? He's. I don't think he's going to get to that point next year where he's going to score 45 points. I think maybe they get 35 to 40 from him. But with the way I saw him playing down the stretch, I'm definitely nervous for these next couple of years. That's for sure. So that will wrap up this second segment for the show, as we are basically done now with all of the top 12 forwards season reviews. So I have a little more to get to for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. But before that, betonline.net is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest developments, news, and odds, including this year's NBA Finals matchup, the Eastern and Western Conference Finals, Major League Baseball, and, of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So, saw what happened in the Eastern Conference Final on Tuesday night. The Lightning, the Rangers learned a valuable lesson with that one. I'm going to spend a few minutes here talking about the Eastern Conference Final. When you have a champion beat down like that, you're about to deliver the knockout punch, you better not hesitate. I almost compared to what the Rangers were doing to what, Rocky was doing to Ivan Drago in Rocky IV, where, he finally gets a cut on him. And it's like the Russians cut, and it's a bad cut. And that's exactly what, the Rangers were doing to the Lightning at first. They cut them pretty good. And then, unlike Ivan Drago, who lost the fight, the Lightning, they come storming back. They win game 3 after being down 2-0 in that game and in the series. They come back in game 4, destroy the Rangers. They had really nothing at even strength in that game. And now it's a best of 3 going back to Madison Square Garden. And, right now it's hard not to think Tampa is going to win this series, just because now they're finally starting to believe again. I'm sure now, as I say that, the Rangers are going to find a way to win this, because, this is the Devils sport. And the fact that the Rangers seem like the team of destiny here. But I was really impressed with how the Lightning, continue to do this. They seem fatigued at times, and they've been down a couple of times in these playoffs. They were down 3-2 against the Maple Leafs. They were down a goal. They were down to their final 20 minutes against the Leafs in game 6 in Tampa Bay. And then they win that game, and then they break Toronto's hearts in game 7. They were down 0-2, and then a 2-0 goal deficit in game 3 with less than a period left. Come back to win that game. They scored the game winner with 40 seconds left. That game goes to overtime. Who knows what happens, because it's a coin flip. And then, the Lightning do what they do. And this is why it's so hard to take out a great champion like this. It reminds me in a lot of ways, to the Penguins from 2016 and 17, why, it took a really good Capitals team, a Stanley Cup champion team, to take out, their nemesis in a team, maybe that was gas, but, a team that was just, giving the rest of the league fits, during those few years. And it's some of the greatest hockey this league has ever seen. So, the Rangers, they got to get back to the drawing board here. They have a lot of injuries, I think, to say the least. And, just again, watching these playoffs, man, the East was there for the taking for the Penguins. I'll still say, if they have Tristan Jarry for that first round series, they probably move on. I think if Jarry's also healthy for the Hurricane series, they potentially win that one, because I was not impressed with what Carolina was doing. And with how the Penguins played against the Lightning during the regular season, I think the Penguins could have given them a heck of a fight as well. I think there could have been a legit chance the Penguins could have gone through the East and gotten to the final, just because of how, there was a case for basically any team in the East to really go far. Maybe outside of Washington, just because they're old and their goaltending was honestly not good during the season. But the other 7 teams, I was saying on this podcast a lot, I can make a case for any one of those teams, even Toronto, just because of the talent that they have, at both all forwards, defense, and goaltending. I know their history obviously is choking, but I don't think it would have really surprised people, just based on their talent level and what they have on paper, to say the least. But it still definitely feels like a missed opportunity for the Penguins, just because the Rangers are playing them so well, and they're not that good of a 5v5 team. And I know Shesterkin's doing his thing, and their power play is unbelievable. But with how good the Penguins are at 5v5, and their special teams are usually good, and Jarry was really good during the regular season. A Pens Bolts series would have been a ton of fun, to say the least. I did pick Bolts in 6 before the series started. Right now, that's still looking good. I'll say that. I'm not trying to reverse jinx myself here, but my prediction still looking decent. Let's see if the Lightning can take Game 5 at Madison Square Garden, and hopefully, put the Rangers out of their misery on Saturday, so we don't have to see a Game 7 on Tuesday. And then, of course, we have the Stanley Cup final after that. But that will do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I really appreciate all of you listening to this one. I'll have another episode for you all on Thursday. We're going to continue the season reviews and get to some other fun topics as well. For all of you that continue to listen to the show, even though it's been almost a month since the Penguins were eliminated, God bless you. Obviously, the show is not going to have the same amount of listeners as it does, during the playoffs and during the regular season, because, people take breaks from the sport. They go enjoy their life, and, they spend time with their wife and your kids, and, you do other stuff, and, think about sports and all that. It's always very respectable. I think, especially from this kind of season, I totally respect anyone who needs a break from thinking about or just talking about this team with people. So, but again, for everyone out there that listens to the show, thank you all so much. I'll be back on Thursday with another episode for this podcast on this team, and I'll talk to you all then. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.